What's up, Geeks and Geekettes? I'm Steady with the Countdown City Geeks Morning Show. We're bringing you all the news headlines from the universe, and here are some of your top geek stories. This show is going to be a little bit different. We've not done any sort of movie reviews on this show, but at the end of this video, you will get a very short, non-spoiler review of Shazam. So stay tuned, and if you don't want to hear anything at all, you can just stop after the second story. Starting out with Tom Holland and a story that we actually were reporting on Friday. He had tweeted Monday morning last week, and this morning we received 3 brand new Spiderman Far From Home posters. They all look very great. We were hoping for a trailer, didn't get one. That's quite alright. But some are speculating that any additional footage from Far From Home would be bad and would actually spoil the events of Avengers Endgame. So we actually might not get a trailer until after Endgame. I don't know. We'll find out. Stay tuned. And a story that we covered from Friday, director Zack Snyder held a very small event in California where he screened 3 previous films and held a short Q&A session afterwards. And Sunday got really interesting when he screened Batman v Superman, and some fans asked about, well, what the hell happened? Zack Snyder revealed to attendees some future plot points in later films, specifically Darkseid murdering Lois Lane in the Batcave when he arrived via boom tube, and this would have sent Clark Kent, our Man of Steel, down his dark path, and the nightmare scene from BVS would have been an actual scene from a future film. This would lead the last remaining members of the Justice League, Batman, Flash, and what's left of Cyborg, he was pretty badly beaten up, to come up with a plan to send the Flash back in time to the events in BVS where Bruce actually sees the Flash and gets a message from him that Lois is the key. Great plotline. I would have loved to see it. Not sure if it's ever going to happen now, but there's more. No one exactly asked Zack during the Q&A if a Snyder Cut existed of Justice League, but some fans did tweet out that after the event they had spoken to him directly, and all the responses seemed to be very similar, that Warner Brothers not only holds a Snyder Cut but holds multiple versions of Justice League, and it's really up to them if they're ever going to see the light of day. And lastly, the thing I really found shocking was that the Snyder Cut isn't the original movie that him and Chris Terrio wrote. Prior to the release of Batman v Superman in theaters, Zack Snyder and writer Chris Terrio had already written a version of Justice League. And then criticisms from critics and audience members alike from Batman v Superman prompted the studio to have a sit down with Chris Terrio and Zack Snyder and asked them to change the story drastically. The main beats were all there, but we were going to get a much darker, more dramatic movie of Justice League than what we got. So if a Snyder Cut does exist, which we're being told it does, and if it was ever released, it still wasn't the story that Zack Snyder had originally come up with. Really makes you wonder what it's all about. Really makes you wonder what could have happened. Even just a script or an original draft. I just want to read that just to kind of see what the big changes were. And finally, if you don't want to hear any of my review, non-spoiler review for Shazam, right now is your chance to go ahead and end this video. But be sure to follow up with us on a future podcast episode where me and the Geekcasters are all going to get down and talk about Shazam thoroughly. But now's your warning, and you are free to go. An early access screening was held by Fandango this weekend. In my city, there's only 2 showings at about half of all the theaters in town where audience members got a chance to see Shazam. And I'm going to start out with this. It was an absolutely fantastic, very fun film. The story follows Billy Batson, not getting into any spoiler territory, but this is just general knowledge of the Shazam character. The story follows Billy Batson going through some struggles in his life. You're really invested in this character. You really feel for him when you see him going through these very emotional, very intense moments. What this movie really does, it has a lot of heart, and that's all because you sympathize with this character. You know, you really feel for him. You wish he'd have to go through all these troubles, but it really makes and defines who he really is. All the kids that were cast in this movie were absolutely fantastic. All of them were very interesting characters. I love the villain, Mark Strong, who I mean, when is he not a good villain? Mark Strong did a great job as well. This movie is hilarious. I cannot stress it enough. And it's not the type of comedy you would expect. Yes, many of the jokes were directed towards kids, but trust me, if you're an adult, there's a lot of adult-themed situations and commentary that occur in this film. And it's all great, and it's all wonderful. It's a very joyous film. There's a lot of very good action. But most importantly, it is a great story. It is a great story to follow. Billy's a great character. His partner in crime, Freddy, is wildly entertaining, and it's just great to sort of follow these kids as they're going through this adventure. This is what it really is. It's an adventure. There's actually one point in the film where I was thinking to myself, this feels like a sort of adventures in babysitting movie. This could be one of those moments right there. But I loved it. There's a lot of emotion, and what you want to get from a comic book movie is not just the sights and the sounds, because every comic book movie is going to have that. But you want heart. You want to feel for these characters. You want to be invested in them. And it's great. It's great to see that. There's a lot of great twists in this movie. I'm not going to spoil any of those, but there's a lot of things that I didn't think DC Comics or Warner Brothers was bold enough to do, and by golly, they did it. So April 5th, when it comes out, be sure you check out Shazam. I promise you, you're going to enjoy it, and if not you, probably your teens or your kids are going to enjoy it, definitely. That is all the news for today. Be sure to check out our podcast on iTunes, your Android podcast app, and be sure to check out our YouTube channel at Countdown City Geeks. There you can find video versions of our episodes. You can also find trailers, as well as our YouTube show, the Countdown City WrestleCast.